Welcome to the buy list. This is episode 32.
This is not financial advice. This is cardboard. Let's
Ooh.
talk about it, Ted. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about legendaries, man. Does FAB have a legendary problem?
It's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and we talked about it a little bit, and we're just gonna dive into it. I think 2.0, like through this is the fourth set,
Mm-hmm.
has been successful.
Yep.
It's LSS has done a incredible job, like rewriting how they basically produce their product on the fly. And they do it every set too. They change the print styles, what gets EA treatments, how rare the EAs are, every single
Mm,
set. Um, and I think that leads to a lot of fun and excitement and discovery. And I honestly, I enjoy the mass box opening part of it so much more because I love just like learning like the little nuances in like,
yeah.
all right, how rare is this thing actually, right?
Yep.
Uh, but I think it's done an incredibly great job, like, stabilizing the market, um, and I think that LSS knows that they have that legendary problem, and it's why they moved into 2.0
Mm-hmm.
to try to make the game a little bit more accessible,
Yep.
um, to your everyday consumer.
Yeah, for sure. I think it kind of hit me this past week, Nate. Sitting down, getting ready for the local draft this week, right? There was some talk about the legendaries from Dusk Till Dawn and just kind of where the rainbow foils are sitting. And I cheekily just reminded everyone, I was like, yeah, but this is what everyone wants, though. And like you saw, I saw like a couple of the guys sitting around were like, oh shit, that's right. That's what
Yeah,
we want. And it's a good thing. And I think you'd mentioned it, and I think we've talked about it a little bit more, but it's worth repeating or taking an examining it again each set as we move into 2.0, as we move deeper into 2.0. Yeah, they definitely had a legendary problem before. Like, then there was still remnants of the old system hanging around. Crown of Providence, Tunic is still hanging around. Just like cards that are in high demand will have that high price tag, right? Any version of it. But I mean, overall, legendaries have become um, much more affordable, right? And we're seeing that in Dust Till Dawn, and we've seen them transition, like you had mentioned. Like, let's not forget, in Uprising, there was like EA rares and commons, and there was all kinds of like tests in that set as well. We've now seen three versions of cards at one point, right? We've seen a rainbow foil, a cold foil, and a cold foil EA.
mhm,
That's been toned down this set. They've pulled that back. Now there's only two versions max. We're seeing that. So yeah, I think they are moving the levers around. We talked about that in the last episode a bit, but as we really kind of try to answer that question of does Flesh and Blood have a legendary problem, it's good to I wanted to start this conversation off on a positive note. I think we both agree that this 2.0 is working and it's better for the players of the game. You can get your legendaries very affordable now, and it's not, and actually, we'll talk about this a little bit more as we dive into some of the other topics we want to hit, but the boxes just don't, your boxes don't always depend on a legendary anymore, which is really nice. But I think, as I'd mentioned, there's going to be some growing pains as the system is kind of in flux.
yeah. I think they've partially solved the legendary problem. I think the problem that they will continue to see going forward, though, is the fact that it's going to be harder for them to kind of like pinpoint value of where they kind of want these things to sit because again, the LSS prints booster boxes to sell to other people, and those booster
Mm,
boxes have to have value. Otherwise, distro won't buy them, the LGS won't buy them, and then the consumer
Mhm.
won't buy them. Um, and I think they've moved a lot of the value into like the hyper chase, flashy variants. You're looking at like the Marvel rarity, um,
Mhm.
basically across the board. And they continue to do new things with the Marvel each set, but they continue to move that value into that slot, which I think is a little bit of a dangerous direction to go
Mhm.
because if if for whatever reason, if maybe economic conditions like deteriorate, maybe people don't have the disposable income to go for the flashiest variants, right?
Mhm.
So before you were relying more on playability to carry the box value, and I think at this point we've seen that the legendaries doesn't matter how playable they are. I think Iron Song Versus and Scowling Fleshbag are some of the best legendaries printed. I mean, like since
2
Crown of
cents?
Providence,
Yeah, since yeah, I was gonna
since Crown of
say,
Providence, like
yeah, yeah, since Dynasty, I mean, the plowing flesh bag is, yeah, Crown of Providence level playable.
ah,
We didn't see, yeah, there was really nothing like that in Dynasty, and then Uprising, you had your like it's like Flame Scale Furnace, like it's tied to a class, but it's really good. It's a key component of that class. So yeah, I mean, Fleshbag is definitely something like that. Outsiders, we've talked about it on here. Like Flick Knives is cool. The Black Tech, out of Dynasty is fun, but really they're kind of niche pieces at best. And I think, it's interesting that you bring that up. I'd like to comment on, them shifting value, Nate. And I agree that shifting it into Marvels is probably something that they even understand is they can't do, you can't get away with that all the time, right?
yeah.
But we have been seeing in Outsiders and Dust Till Dawn so far that there is a conscious effort, or it does seem like there's a conscious effort to shift some of that value into playable Majestics.
Yes.
Outsiders, we saw the Majestic pull rate go down. That's one lever that they pulled. And we also saw big bombs like Codex of Frailty be printed. And in this set, we saw Warmongers, which I think will be, that card will not, that card will be a meta staple for a while. I think it's be a very weird meta for that card not to be playable, right?
It's just such a low deck building cost
Yeah.
to play a blue block 3 0 cost that like can just kind of like wreck certain decks. Like that card can
Hmm.
basically win you a game out of nowhere. And I mean we've continued to see it every like the PTI event in Chicago, like the
Hmm.
Drome had no business winning the game. They play a freaking Warmongers, and
Yeah.
it's just like, oh,
Well, I win.
the Azira's like, oh, oopsie, I lose now.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Sorry, Levi. Levi's a
right.
homie.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's interesting. I guess we're kind of building our case into our final, our final discussion point of the legendaries, but and I think that also we did talk about, and I got in there some show notes here, Nate. We also it leads us into, as they try to find their way with these rarities, again, continue our conversation from last episode. Go watch that episode. We break down all the rarity right now. What was it, 700 boxes worth
Yeah.
of
Data.
pull rates and data. So there's some good data in there for pull rates for Dusk Till Dawn, but I think we hit on it a little bit there. But it's worth bringing up in this conversation too that the pull rates keep adjusting, and that really stresses. It stresses the right word. I don't know. It really puts a interesting time on each. The first 2 weeks of a set are very interesting because of that. Because
Yeah.
because there's really like it's really hard to tell what's rare and what's not. Because sometimes things can be extremely rare, aka I think that the fabled CNC is maybe one of the most rare printed fableds to date. Like that card's
Yes.
hard to pull.
Yeah. And I think And like to your point, I think that the community kind of goes in with the expectation of like X rarity equals X pull
Yeah.
rate.
Cold foil
Which,
fables are this hard to pull, like this
which kind
many
of
boxes.
yeah, like it dictates basically the saying like if it's X rarity, we can expect this supply and this kind of price range.
Yeah.
And that's just like not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And with each set, I think we're gonna see that change. Like you look at the gold foil extended arts from Outsiders. Those things were incredibly rare, like 1 in 40
Hmm.
boxes.
Yeah.
And
Just
this
math
set
wise, though, we know, like, just at a high level, right, Nate? Sorry to cut you off there, but
no, yeah, yeah.
good thing to point out there with those EAs and like why you might be like, wait, why are they more rare than the ones in this set? Well, because you could pull a cold foil trench, a rainbow foil trench, and an EA trench, right? So you had three right you're diluting the pool already. It makes it harder to pull. You know, you're already making just by pure numbers, those cards were harder to pull in certain rarities. And then yeah, and then compared to Dust to Dawn, like you said, they've now eliminated three variants. I think there was some good community feedback, or I
Yeah.
think they realized it because again they couldn't fix it in time, but I think they saw it right away. They're like, oh, three isn't probably where it's at, so they moved it back down to two, or they just had some foresight, and I think that's the right call. But that means Carapace, Diadem, and the Rapture, that's the other one, the third one, are inherently easier to pull.
Yes. And I think we saw the same thing with Dynasty as well, because there's the 3 variants there
Yep.
for Soraya and Crown, where it was like the cold foil was like this like awkward middle ground that like
Yeah.
people didn't really know. Like I was scooping up cold foil Crown of Dominions for 30 bucks like a couple weeks after release because people didn't know what to do with them. I was picking up those and rainbow foils because I was like, y'all are crazy. Like
Yeah.
this is
Drawing
a
cards is
generic
good.
yeah, this is a generic headpiece that says you gain something. That's good. It doesn't matter now. Later that will be valuable.
Yeah.
And now you see like every deck is like, "Can I be a cash in deck?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
There is.
can I do that?" I
Yeah.
like this. So, um,
Yep.
and I think like the EAs were incredibly high on release, like 300, 350, because that's what they were kind of expecting was like that rarity of like Trench and
Yeah.
Shroud, and it's not even remotely close.
Hmm.
So you kind of see those overpriced initially, and then you see cards like Warmongers where people just kind of like chase to the bottom,
Hmm.
and now it's $25 card
Yeah.
where like it was selling for like $8 the first 2 days of release.
Yeah.
Um, and I think kind of goes to show like a lot of people who are maybe like doing mass box openings aren't really taking playability into account when they're pricing their cards.
Hmm.
And it's leading to this like chase to the bottom. They're just trying to like get product out the window, but it also leads to a lot of mispricing in the market. And I still would argue that like there is a lot of mispricing in this Dust Till Dawn market
Hmm.
um, because the rarities aren't understood fully. And my main point of preference here is like the EAs, while they are absolutely gorgeous cards, they're pulled at roughly the same rate as like the other cold foil legendaries.
Hmm.
So like talking about Fleshbag and Iron Song, okay, Iron Song versus has Dorinthia on it.
Yeah.
Checks one box of like Wafu decks.
Yeah.
So like you're looking at a cold foil Iron Song versus. We opened one cold foil Iron Song versus in 152 boxes. We opened 4 EA Raptures.
Yeah.
Like, while that spread probably isn't something that would
Yeah.
maintain over more boxes, that was probably just, like, a lot of variance because I think that
Hmm.
this product does have a lot of variance in it.
Yeah.
It's the fact that Cold Foil Iron Song Versus is relatively the same pull rate as Diadem or Rapture or
Hmm.
Carapace,
Carapace. Yeah.
but it's being priced, like, significantly under that, and same thing with Fleshbag. Fleshbag is being priced at $75 while, Rapture, which I don't even know if it's 100% playable, it's locked to 1 hero, Well, it's more beautiful for sure because you have one that says "scowling flesh bag" and you have one that has boobies on it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the difference is 60, $70,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about playability too.
Right.
Like, playability is like Rapture's unplayable because Prism unplayable, and Scowling Flesh Bag busted because Reiner's the best deck.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting conversation, right, that we've had as we looked at the
Yeah,
data. Um, yeah, we just have to keep that in mind every time a Flesh and Blood launch happens, right? So I would say that there's deals to be had out there if you're keeping a keen eye out, right? If you got your warmongers for $8, congrats. And I think that will continue to happen as they just like keep playing with what they put in sets,
yeah,
as far as EAs, things like that, chase cards. Um, but yeah, so I guess that gets us to the title of this episode, Nate. You know, the problem with legendaries. Um, yeah, so now
yeah.
we've talked about it, right? Flesh and Blood 2.0 is working. The legendaries are now affordable. I'm looking over at my screen right now just to give some examples. Rainbow foil, scowling flesh bag, right? If you want to be a Rhinar boy or a Levia guy,
Life!
$37. And we just talked about how good it is, right?
Heart's insane.
Um, $26 for the Carapace, solid card.
That one
60 bucks.
blows my brain right now.
Yeah.
That card should not be
Yeah.
$26. Y'all are on crack cocaine.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Also, Room Blades are dead, by the way. But anyways,
Moonblades are not okay, they did print
we live in
Warmongers, which is quite
warmongers.
sad.
Yeah. Um,
Okay, okay, okay. It's not great, but
it's not great out there. But yeah, like Crown of Providence, they fixed that, right? 2.0
yeah,
reprint, $59 for Crown of Providence. Excellent job. Excellent job, LSS. That's perfect. Now we can cut down on some of those. I want to play this game, but how you expect me to buy a $300 helmet, right?
yeah,
That's great. Like I'm looking over at these cards, and there's just like everything's affordable, and it's been that way since like I mean you have some, it's been that way since 2.0, which is perfect.
yeah.
But Nate, does Flesh and Blood have a legendary problem?
Yes, and no. I think they've solved the price point issue with 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
I think that going forward, they will have a legendary problem because they are putting these legendaries in the equipment slot. And right now, you've got 4 equipment slots. So you are very
You have
hamstrung.
5 if you consider like legendary shields, right?
Oh, yeah, sure, sure.
Rampart, yeah,
And, yeah, and quivers. So
yeah,
most people have 4.
yeah.
Some special people get 5. So um, I think that, and you look at the prices now, and I think it's like, I don't know. I don't want to say like concerning that the prices seem actually incredibly stable at where they sit now.
Yeah.
They found their floor really quickly, which is actually like the sign of a like very good mature market. They
I
found their
think
price point very fast,
y-
and it's very stable now.
yeah,
Um,
we also have to again shout out to the last week's episode. Again, go watch that if you haven't. But we have the pull rates up there. They adjusted the legendary rainbow foil pull rates. Right, they're like one. They're like one every two and
two and a half,
2 and a half, 2.7, 2.7 somewhere
yeah, two point
boxes. If you want to get real sharp with it, but it's like 2.5 boxes, which is you'd be pulling these things at an alarming rate.
left,
Like
right, and center.
it is interesting. It's like crazy to see sometimes, right? So I think that pull rate has now, like you said, pushed it to these are what these cards are worth, right? And then now a meta will adjust them up, I think, is kind of
Yep.
where we sit now.
I don't know that a meta will adjust them up. I think that, I mean, then again, you look at like Levia. Levia is sitting at $88, but I have a feeling like I think that also because Levia essentially has one printed version.
Yeah.
So I think this is also like one of those LSS tests to see like how chasey can we make the alternate version
Hmm.
while trying to maintain a, like, a sub-100 price point for a legendary, and I think Levia is gonna be a challenge. Like, I genuinely think that that will be a challenge because there's only one version printed. So all the
Yeah.
demand is concentrated into that one version.
Yeah. And to play the hero, you have to get this card. She's the
You
new
don't
hot.
have to, she's just really bad if you don't.
She's unplayable if you don't. So there's a couple things, as you talk about that. I mean, it is sitting at $88, which is the most expensive legendary right now, right?
Yep,
If you
yep.
lump it into the rainbow foils. But I think we're okay, so we're sitting at a precipice here, Nate, with Levia. If we want to just dive off into that for 1 second,
Yeah,
it's either she becomes meta and $88 does not exist anymore.
yeah,
Like it goes up
yeah,
because there's not a lot of them.
yeah.
Or she becomes like a B tier hero and doesn't really fight Lexi all that well and kind of just has variants, like we've seen over 2 weeks, she's made top eights, but hasn't really made a huge splash. Then that number probably comes down a little bit. I think we're still in that wash right now with her card.
I don't know how much it can come down though. Like, there would have to be a pretty significant supply injected into the market
Yeah,
for that to come down.
that's true.
I in like the Levia is also a good example of like this is a legendary not constrained by equipment, right?
Hmm.
Like this is a slot that goes in your deck instead of in your equipment slot. So equipment is replaceable. Like having like if you don't want to run Iron Song versus and you already have Brave Forge Bracers, you're like, not worth
Yep.
40 bucks. The difference isn't that high.
Yeah.
If you already have a Crown of Providence and maybe you're like, Flush Bag, you're adorable, but I already got crown. I
Yeah.
paid 200 bucks for this stupid crown. I'm gonna play with my stupid crown. You
Most.
might hold off and not buy, and that might be like throttling back the prices on these.
Yep. Most. And then I think yeah, we've talked about this a little bit previously, but most of these class cards have a printed version that just can't get any better. Like, and you actually, as LSS, you don't want to keep printing an arm slot that just outdoes the last arm slot because
Yes.
people get very tired of that cycle. It's like, dude, you just printed an arm that I just bought 2 sets ago, or like even not the next set, but like 2 sets ago, and you're like, dude.
Yep.
So like people get tired of it. Second of all, you can't balance a game like this, right?
Yep.
Like I'll go back to my favorite. I'll go back to something that I've said multiple times on this show is like you cannot print an arm better than Grasp of the Arknight.
Yeah.
Like you legit can't. And I think, and that almost goes for most of the battle worn equipment. Like you can, if LSS prints it, it will be instantly on the radar for like a ban. Like if that hero has enough steam, right? Like it's just like Grasp is like best in class and you can't go above it. So then how do you keep printing arm legendaries or chest? Like you can't get better than Findel's tunic, right? So it's like they kind of, like you said, I think that's what you're talking about is like they've locked themselves a bit. And we're starting, and that's kind of the problem, right? With to wrap it all up, right? That's definitely one of the
Yeah.
problems with legendaries right now.
It's the problems going forward. It's either you have to completely lap the card like, I'm sorry, Brave Forge Bracers, but bye, Felicia. You're dog shit now. Like, Iron Song Versus is better in, like, every single way. I can't find a single way where where Brave Forge Bracers
Yeah.
is better. So, don't at me, Warrior Boys, like, Brave Forge Bracers is dead. Have its funeral, move on with your life. Um,
Yeah, which just kind of
it
sucks though, right? That's what I was talking
it
about. You
is.
don't
Look,
like
I
it's
have, like
I think it's okay to do that once in a while, and I think it's probably fine to do that here because warriors need some help in general, right? I mean, Dory's we've been kind of touting the Dory pain train here for a couple weeks because Oldham's gone, but I think like it's not the worst. Like you don't want to print like you don't want to print a better New Horizon or something. You know what I mean? You like you kind of just chill on
yeah,
some of those. But I mean, I think at times it's probably okay to lap a card, right? Crown of Providence. I think, lapping Skullcap.
I think it's
That one
bad. I
kind
think
of
it's
makes
bad.
sense.
I think every time a card gets lapped, it's bad for the game.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think it's unless the card is, like, just extinct and ancient and like, bad on drop. Looking at you, Redback Shroud. Like, that card can get lapped by common equipment, okay? Like,
Yeah.
it ain't hard. That card's terrible. But I think
They have to
it's
be super careful with it, man. That's all I'm
they do have
saying.
to be
Like they
careful
can't
with it.
just, yeah.
But you either have to lap the cards to begin with, or you have to completely silo the hero into its own separate archetype. And I think that's
Mhm.
also bad. Because like then you're like basically
Limiting deck
you're
choices
limiting
and
deck
stuff.
building, which is boring. Like I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but every time I get limited in my deck building, I'm bored. Let me do crazy stuff and have fun. And I think it goes to like being more like casual based as well. Like when you kind of like lock some of these things to like you can only use this card with like
Yeah.
axes or swords. Boring.
Yeah, I've played card games, although it was a digital card game where they released heroes that I guess, well, I don't know why I'm not saying it, but Legends of Runeterra, um they did that exact same thing, and it was like really frustrating where like certain heroes, Tom Kinch and Soraka, got launched and they could only play with certain cards and themselves, like because in that game you can play with two heroes in your deck, and
Yeah.
like that was it. And it was just like, oh, I would like to play a Tom Kinch doing something else, but you really couldn't. It was very hard. So like, yeah, I've seen that before, and I don't want that to become a thing.
Yeah. It's so like I think we see it a little bit with the design of Vincetti, the spaghetti
I
monster.
wasn't gonna say it. I'm glad you said it because I've already bagged on her enough. But like, I think she is like fully locked into rune gating and can't really explore outside of that mechanic, which is a little bit of a bummer because you just
It
become bad Viscerai if you try to do something else. It's like, why am I not just playing Viscerai?
Yeah, 100%. Like her entire mechanic revolves around basically using these rune chants that you create to play these like overcosted things for free.
Hmm.
I mean, they're overcosted if you cast them out of hand, but when you can play them for free, it's like that's value town, baby.
Hmm.
Sign me up. But it's also hard to do because like
Yeah.
a lot of the tools that like Viserai likes to use to make rune chants just like aren't available, which is basically Viserai's hero ability. But it's kind of like hard to build around it when you only have this supplemental set. So her design is like relatively siloed. You have to play a lot of the cards released in Dusk Till Dawn, and then you have to kind of pull from like some other stuff to try to make her like reasonably playable. And I think it's just like not as fun design space where like if you have like if she could play Mordredtide, which is not Viserai locked, like I'm excited for that. Like
Hmm.
if her ability was like an action with Go again, where it was like banish a card from hand, gain a rune chant, like Mordredtide's online for that deck.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
It
But yeah.
isn't it's an interesting problem because if then they silo these legendaries aren't gonna hold value either. And I think having that legendaries be this like everyone remembers the first legendary they ever opened,
Yeah.
right? Like what was your first legendary?
Grasp of the Arknight.
Stormstriders.
Hmm.
Like it everyone remembers their first legendary because it's such a like, "Oh, like
Yeah.
I opened something really special."
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that from the game because I think it's something that's like really cool and unique about Flesh and Blood because it really just like so many people, it's like this is the first legendary I opened, and now this is the hero I main because it's the first
Yeah.
legendary I
Yeah.
opened. um,
So it's
and
like but it's a balancing act too, right?
yeah,
Because
it is.
we have those exciting memories because legendaries were insanely expensive.
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
grass for 150 at one point, and I was like, oh my god, I wanted to play Viscerai. I got the thing. I didn't have to buy them or
Yeah.
trade away my whole box.
Yeah.
So yeah, so now they're moving money or they're moving value out of those cards, and that's a problem, or that can cause a problem, right? Because in my head still, I'm like, oh my god, I got a legendary, and then I look and it's like $15, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't add up anymore. Flesh and blood, and I think we're going through that a little bit right now, Nate.
Uh, and like
So
maybe we need to ask some new players too. Like, I don't know, if someone opens a diadem, are they like, oh, what a legendary? Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna build a diadem deck. And then they realize that card is functionally not playable and they move on with their life and they just quit flesh and blood. I don't know.
yeah,
What do these new people do? Like,
we
or like a soulbound resolve. Like
yeah,
you might actually build Bolton and that could be like a
yeah.
reasonable card in that deck. But
I think we took
I,
like 5 minutes to get here, but the I guess the point we're trying to say too is that um it seems like they're with FAB 2.0, they understand that they have to change some things.
yeah,
And I think Legendary Levia is a good start to that. Like you said, don't let them be locked to equipment because you just can't keep printing better and better head pieces, chest pieces, etc.
yeah,
Like do that every once in a while. So then there's a chase card that's awesome. Um, but they've done this before with like kind of mixed success, Nate, right? Eclipse, Doomsday, Spirit of Arena, I think it
Arena, yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
Arena.
The card's busted.
Yeah. So those
That
are all
reminds me.
legendaries, right? So, and they go in your deck. So that's interesting. You have to buy 3 of them now. It's kind of, I don't know. It's, I would say it's been a mixed bag with those, but I think we'll start to see more and more of that. Maybe legendary weapons, like generic Talishar reforged, right? Like a swings for 6 or something 4 times a game and then breaks again. Or you know what I mean? Or do something where it like breaks and turns back into Talishar the broken one, and then you can swing with it like I don't know, what is it, 3 times?
Talishar, the rusty piece of garbage.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
cool. Like, I think they need to try to find, and I think, you said it best, right? We have to stop trying to lock them to the equipment slot, because I think that is trouble moving forward. For anything outside of a new class, right? If they print Necromancer in the next set, then obviously they can print legendary. They can print a whole suite of legendaries for it, and then you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
But like when we're talking about like Carapace, right? Rune Blades already have 4-5 options. You throw Tunic in there, you got Husk, you got all this stuff. You can't go better than Husk. So then now we're to the point of like, and I guess Carapace is a good thing to bring up as we wind down here, Nate, is that like it might signal legendary design in the future as well. Just like fully a card that's just doesn't have any text other than it's just a tech piece. X class gets two arcane barrier and 3 block with temper, right? Like assassins, you now have a, you know what I mean? They like not the block, but like maybe they have a, they just legendaries start having like 2 arcane, or you know what I mean? Just a
I think 2 arcane barrier is a mistake.
but you know what I mean? Just
I
like a
do.
full tech slot, right? Like
I legitimately do. I think that like you should like that should be if you're worried about our wizard brethren, like pack your null rune. Seriously, like stop lapping null rune robes. All right,
that's
null rune robes did nothing wrong.
that's funny. I
But
did
like
realize
I
today an Oasis and Carapace will block 6 arcane. Baby.
stop.
Let 'em-
That's dangerous.
One blue, baby. Woo, let's go.
I think you should have to
Bring it on,
dedicate slots
Icelander.
if you're worried about the wizards. And I think just printing like AB2 on a piece of equipment is not good for the game. They haven't done it since Crew, and then they were like, "Let's do it again, baby."
Yeah.
I
Carapace
think
could have been a Majestic in Crew, I think. Just throwing it out there.
Carapace is the most majestic Crew piece of equipment I've ever seen in my whole life. just
Seeing a
random.
little rarity creep here, LSS.
Yeah. But
But
like, what's funny is like that's I think one of also like a very strong piece of equipment printed, and there's just like no demand for it, which is wild to me. But I think to like your point, like you said, like it is competing with so many other chess slots already. That's why there's no demand for it. People are
yeah,
running Tunic, people are running like Aether Ironweave.
yeah,
Like there's you have Husk if you're playing Vincetti. I like there's not a lot of reason to be
to
like running out to purchase this,
yep,
right? Like
yep.
it's not like this is the new flashy piece of equipment that like kind of fills the void in your equipment suite.
Hmm.
It's like this is like this is the equipment when you go like in like scrounge through a dungeon, you're like worth $50.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
keep it in my backpack. I'm not gonna ditch it for like some scraps of food
Yeah,
before I head back to the merchant, but
yeah,
I'll keep it in my backpack. I'm not wearing it unless my chess piece breaks.
yeah.
But like that's the kind of like in those RPG games, that's what it reminds me of. No one's
It's
excited
not a
about this.
strict upgrade.
No one's happy about this. But
Yeah,
they're
they're
like,
like, well, it's purple and it's got like 2 slots that I can upgrade it. I guess I'll
yeah,
keep it, right?
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
keep it just in case for some reason my chest breaks or I run into like this random thing that it actually works against. But other
yeah,
than that, this thing is getting sold to the first merchant I see.
yeah.
So
No, and I think, yeah, Nate, I think overall, does Flesh again, I'll say it again. Does Flesh and Blood have a legendary problem? Yeah, I think it does. And I think we outlined our thoughts on it. I don't think it's a negative thing, to be honest. I
no,
think it's something that they've shown to me at least that they fully understand. Maybe not fully understand, but I think they understand it at LSS just from what I see from Dusk Till Dawn and the last couple sets.
yeah,
And I think they're working on fixing it, and I think they will, because they've already proven that they can fix their first legendary problem, which was legendaries were too damn expensive, and they fixed it with FAB 2.0. So
yeah,
I think this fix is easier than the last fix.
agreed. I think that this is more of a design fix. I think that my hot take is that legendaries are too cheap now. I think that they're too cheap and too easy to get, so they're not as special. I think if they settled around like 50 to $60, it makes it so you have like this you have some investment, some buy-in, but it still feels special to open.
Yep.
Um, and I'd like it to get back to that space, and I like the cold foils to hold more value as well. And I think that they could do something to make these cold foils like just give make all the cold foils EA. I don't know. Apparently EA makes the cold foils have more value. So maybe they just
Mm,
do if instead of it's just rainbow foil and cold foil EAs.
yep.
And that's what makes that like next rarity special. And then maybe for one or two legendaries a set, they just knock out the cold foil and they just go straight to some like blingy nutso rare version. And I think the one thing that LSS has not experimented with all at all, well, I guess they have a little bit, is like alt arts. Like, why don't we have like an alt art legendary or an alt art fable? An alt art fable, oh my goodness, $1 billion. You're welcome, James White.
Isn't CNC kind of,
Exactly. It
yeah?
is. It's an alt art fable.
And it also is one
It's a
billion
reprint.
dollars.
And it is $1 billion. You're welcome, James White. I solved it for you.
Yeah.
'Cause they have a fabled problem too. That's next week's episode. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think you're probably right. Time will
And
tell.
I'm always right.
Time will tell, but I think Dust Till Dawn pull rates for Rainbow Foil legendaries might have been tuned up just a little bit too much. And cold foils maybe need to be tuned up just a little bit. I think you separate those, you go both ways with those. You go a little bit more rare on well, no, actually, both the same way. You go a little bit more rare on both of those so that cold foils feel epically special.
Yes.
Um, Personally, I would say get rid of common and rare cold foils, except for like weapons, because weapons are cool for your hero, or make them marvels or something. So then when you open a cold foil, it is like the craziest thing you've ever seen. There's no
But make
like
it
There's no
But
like,
making cold foils 1 per box too. That's like a
yeah,
participation prize.
yeah,
Like, knock that shit out.
yeah.
Like, that's what's wrong with America right now is participation prizes, and cold foil per box is a participation prize. Like,
Yeah,
make cold foil special again.
yeah.
Make it, like, 1 per case maybe. I don't even know, just make it 1
I-
per, like,
I've kind
not
of,
box.
yeah, I've kind of always been on that since Fab 2.0 because I misread the announcement and I thought they were getting rid of all the like fluffy cold foils, the commons and stuff. And when you
Yep.
pulled a cold foil, it would be like, oh my God, I just got a Rapture. That's
Yes.
cold foil. This is amazing. So I think that should still happen. But yeah, I think, but yeah, there is a problem. Again, it's easier to fix this one than it was the last problem they had. And Fab 2.0 fixed that with flying colors.
Mm,
So I am fully excited to see what LSS does because I think they know what they're doing and they're slowly creeping up on it, right? Because the worst thing to do is like shock the system with these types of things
yeah.
because we're
I
all
so
very fragile card gamers, and
li
my mind will shatter if you change things too quickly.
yeah, don't. We're basically boomers, okay? Like, Fab is card game for boomers, okay?
Yeah,
I would argue that LSS doesn't know what they're doing, but they're trying and they're learning and they're
in a good
adapting.
way though. In a good way.
I guess, yeah, yeah. Listen, like, no one knows how to do any of this shit. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me be very clear. You don't know. I don't know. Ted doesn't know. Your dog doesn't know. And your mom
Wizards
doesn't know.
doesn't know.
Wizards doesn't know. No, Pokemon doesn't know.
Yeah,
LSS is very adaptive and receptive and changes things, and you see it in every product release. And that's the thing that is really special about LSS. Like, they are so willing to innovate and push the envelope and listen to their consumers and sometimes tell them they're wrong
yeah,
and sometimes be like, "You know what? You guys were right. But like, we're gonna change that."
yeah.
So, like, it's a beautiful blend. They're not just, like, caving to us being, like, whiny babies, like, "Eh," like
Hmm.
like, it's it's what makes this game really special. It's what makes the community really special.
Yep.
So thank you to all of you out there that have sat through this diatribe of rants and
Yeah.
wanderings
Yeah,
with
Nate.
us.
We're a little bit deep into this, a little bit longer episode this week.
Yeah.
Nate, let's wrap this thing up quickly. What you buying this week? What's your buy list?
I've got to round out my cold foil collection. So I either need to buy Josh out of our. So what me and Josh do is we split 152 boxes. Which means when we open an odd number of cards, we split the card in half. Not literally,
Yeah.
but we basically mark it on our spreadsheet as point 0.5 of a card. So we currently own point 0.5. I own point 0.5 of an Iron Song Versus, and he owns point 0.5 of an Iron Song Versus. Uh, and no one is buying it. We can't sell it. We keep trying
Cold
to sell it,
foil?
and then like one of us will be like, "Oh, we got someone to buy it," and then the other one's like, "Oh, never mind, it just fell through." So I'm gonna try to buy him out of that because I want to. I That's my last cold foil I need for my set of
Yeah.
cold foil legendaries.
See this?
Oh my goodness,
This is
Ted, sell it to
Josh's.
me. Wait, what? He sold it to you?
No, he opened it last week.
Oh, that's right, he did. Oh, all right, good.
He
That means
has
it'll be
one.
easier to
But
buy
no,
him out of his
yeah,
half.
yeah, for sure.
We also
Uh,
have a cold foil fable, and I think we're both too chicken shit to buy each other out of it.
yeah, yeah. To jump into what I'm looking at, we kind of talked about it a little bit before, and you reminded me that I do need a Blood Rot Marvel to kind of get the Trinity. They're like $100 right now. Such a deal, man. Those cards are hard to pull. Definitely will try to be grabbing one of those.
Yep.
But I got my EA destruction widespreads set this today, actually all filled out. So I'm sleeving up and set. I need to buy some cold foil weapons because they printed a bunch more in this set. Now I got to get a bunch more graded. Scepter of Pain, Flail, Grimoire. Ugh, 3 of them in one set. Come on, Room Blades. The most well-equipped weapon slot, weapon class in the game. Jeez, oh Pete.
Yeah.
So much
I
grading I have to do.
so much. And PCG's down.
Yeah, and I can't even send them in. But
Yep.
yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing this week.
Awesome. Well, I hope that you can find yourself some good candidates for grading.
All right. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for listening. 45-minute episode. I appreciate it. If you made it this far, please please subscribe, please hit the bell. It all helps. Please comment below, and we'll talk to you next time.
Peace.
Peace.